I feel like everything's falling apart. I have this story pulled up about an attack on a Norway mosque. They say a body found at the home tied to the assailant. This story is from yesterday, and we had a similar story. Norway mosque shooter allegedly posted to 8chan before attack. He reportedly attempted to live stream the attack on Facebook. It feels like everything's falling apart. The other day, Epstein was apparently dead by suicide. A very powerful multimillionaire who was going to bring down a ton of wealthy and powerful individuals. A day after the documents come out. A day after documents come out naming Democrats, governors, politicians, etc. He's dead. And almost nobody believes it, right? It feels like everything's coming undone because this story from the New York Times, I highlight this first, because look at this right here. The police said they were aware of online posts linked to the suspect whose name had not been released. About 2 hours before the attack, a post appeared on 8chan, the message board that had hosted the anti-immigrant manifesto of the guy in El Paso. Well, cobblers, it's my time, the post began in English, ending with the Norwegian phrase Valhall Venter, or heaven awaits. Do you know why I think everything's falling apart and why I'm highlighting this? Perhaps some of you have gotten the point already, and I'm just trying to build up the suspense. 8chan has been down. I tried going to 8chan. It's not there. I have a story from CBS News. 8chan said it was coming back online. Now another internet company appears to have blocked it. That was on the 5th. As far as I know, 8chan is down. And get this. The story from The Verge that actually said the Norway mosque shooter allegedly posted to 8chan, they deleted it because it was fake news. The New York Times still has this up. Did they bother fact checking? They didn't. They didn't even fact check. We're at a point now where not only is fake news running rampant, but how do we even trust the New York Times? And all you can then do is say, well, the New York Times is better than nothing, right? I don't know. Because now look what happens with Epstein. You got a bunch of people tweeting out Clinton body count, another bunch of people tweeting out Trump body count. Obviously, the Trump body count one is in response to the Clinton body count one. The Clinton body count one has been a conspiracy theory for a really, really long time. But here's the thing. Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks, is tweeting about we need to hold everyone accountable. He's tweeting as though we know it's not a suicide. But more still, Hassan Piker of the Young Turks, a socialist, tweeted out a joke about the Clintons doing this. And he tweeted, I believe it was July 25th. I retweeted all of these. I agree with him. I think this is what we're seeing is the populist versus elitist for sure. But Hassan Piker tweeted out, this is a socialist guy, Epstein's going to kill himself. Like, how long until it happens? Everyone knew it was going to happen. I don't want to keep rehashing, I don't know. For one, things seem wild and insane right now because of what happened in the past week. It's been a crazy, crazy week. But the thing about Epstein is that we knew it was going to happen. So Will Chamberlain wrote this article, Jeffrey Epstein's death stinks, and he makes this point, of which I completely agree. Usually, Occam's razor suggests that the conspiratorial explanation for a shocking event is less likely one. Not so here. Assembling an innocent explanation of Epstein's death requires assuming a staggering amount of incompetence on the part of MCC Manhattan staff. Despite a near miss on July 30th, they would have had to innocently give their most infamous and high-profile criminal defendant the means and opportunity to kill himself, and in doing so, utterly fail at the most basic responsibilities. He mentions that El Chapo stayed there with the motive to kill himself, didn't. He says, indeed, an exchange on Twitter between James Gagliano, a former FBI agent, and Preet Bharara, the former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, the two described themselves as dumbfounded that Epstein could have been able to commit suicide. Eli Honig, a CNN analyst and former assistant U.S. attorney in the same office, tweeted that in his 8 years as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District, he couldn't recall any suicides at MCC during that time. I was planning on doing like one segment about this story, maybe one segment about this story, and I'm reading these and I'm like, we've lost the ability to find reality, and that's the most important point. The New York Times still has up a post claiming that a guy made a post to 8chan when 8chan has been down for days. Perhaps it came back, but then why would The Verge write the same story and then delete it? And my understanding is that they took it down with a statement saying it didn't meet their editorial standards. Yes, because 8chan has been down. Think about what the New York Times just posted here and has still left up. And think about the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, right? The Gell-Mann amnesia effect typically refers to when you're an expert. For those that aren't familiar, let me explain. Let's say you're a plumber. You know everything about plumbing. You're reading the New York Times one day on the front page, they say, there was a plumbing accident where flames were erupting out of the sewer line or out of the water faucet. And you go, flames? Well, I mean, was it a fracking related thing? We've seen those videos. And then they mentioned that fire and water were coming out. And you're like, wait, hold on. This seems like it doesn't make sense. And then they make some, like, the point I'm trying to get to, because actually there have been videos of fire coming out, is there's like an absurd circumstance where journalists write something so obviously false to you as an expert, you say, this is fake news. There's not fire shooting out of faucets in New York City. That's ridiculous. But you're an expert, so you know. Then you turn the page, and there's a story about Syria, and you go, wow, I didn't know that. The Gell-Mann amnesia effect references how when you as an expert see a fake story, you forget the story was fake and assume the next story is true. Now we have an ever-increasing problem. The story is completely fake, and any layman who has been reading the news knows this makes no sense. We saw the story from the New York Times days ago claiming 8chan was down. And when they said it was down, I loaded it with no problem. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But then sure enough, yes, I checked just before 8chan was down. Perhaps they popped back up, somebody posted, and then it went down again. But that's absurd. You also have the conflicting narrative with The Verge taking down the article. This is an archive, and they've deleted the article. What's real anymore? I don't know. You now have a lot of media. There's a story that's got like 23,000 shares from The Hill about Trump retweeting a conspiracy theory about Epstein. And you've got a bunch of people, weird, I don't even know how we get to this point, saying, oh no, Trump's tweeting a conspiracy. There's literally high-profile verified leftists saying things, I kid you not, on Twitter, Bill Barr's murderous gang took out Epstein. They really believe it. They believe Trump was going to be implicated, so Bill Barr had his goons go in and do something. And then you have people who believe it was the Clintons who did something. Well, then you have some people like Cernovich, who's, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think he's saying something to the effect of, there are way more powerful people at play than just the Clintons, and it's silly to stop there, especially when they're basically out of the game. Sure, they have things to lose, but come on, they're so old. There are other people who are still powerful, still at risk. But the main point I'm trying to get to here with this story about like Epstein is that Will Chamberlain makes a good point about Occam's razor. That's what I wanted to mention in the beginning. We're at a point now where we cannot say with certainty what is more likely to be true. We're at a point now where the New York Times puts out a story that is completely conflicted by The Verge. Okay, you say, would you rather trust the New York Times? Okay, that's fine. But 8chan's down according to CBS News. CBS News says they struggled to get back online. And every source I find says they're not up, and I went and they're not up. What's real anymore? Over the past several years, there's been a talk about how it's becoming increasingly hard for people to know what's true and what isn't. We have a fake news problem and people believe it. We have talk about how Facebook needs to do something about it. We have talk about how Twitter needs to do something about it. But then what happens yesterday? Clinton body count and Trump body count were both trending. All of a sudden, Clinton body count was gone. Yep. But Trump body count was still there. That's not solving the problem of fake news. That's exacerbating it. But when we're at a point now, when the New York Times puts out what seems to be completely fake news, not the first time, they've done it before, but I trust the New York Times. But when they put this out, when The Verge does and then takes it down, I kind of don't know what to say anymore. You know, a lot of people say that, they tell me that I do a good job of being an investigative journalist or of finding the truth, and I think I do at least the bare minimum. When I see a story like this, I say, oh wow, he posted something to 8chan. I try to look up if 8chan is up, if it ever did come up, and no, apparently the best I can find is that it's been down. That's all I try to do. What's their source and is it true? Do a quick fact check. I'm just doing fact checking like any normal journalist is supposed to do, which the New York Times doesn't, which The Verge didn't, and then I had to retract, and the New York Times still hasn't retracted. I don't think I'm doing anything special. But here's the thing. People say, oh, Tim is honest, he's doing a good job. Yeah, but listen, for the most part, I'm relying on the New York Times. Like when I report a story about Trump or about the Democrats, Pelosi, Schumer, AOC, I'm reading these same sources, and now we're here. Will Chamberlain argues that the simple solution in the Epstein case is that it's more simple to assume there was foul play. But I agree. At what point does it seem absurd that a guy who tried to kill himself then was able to do it again? You know, I said the other day that it seems like the guy had reason to do it, right? But Will counters my point. I was saying it's probably, look, a guy is going to live in squalor. He hates his life. He's done. He's over. He wants to kill himself. But Will brings up the point that he was fighting it, that he was considered to be in good spirits. I don't know if any of that's evidence. But you know what? Let me step back from that point and just clarify and make this point. I do not think it is unreasonable to think Epstein was murdered. Even the Young Turks agree. Everyone's been joking about it. How can it be something so obvious that everybody has been making a joke like we all knew it was going to happen? And then it did. And then the media tells us we're crazy. And the media says it's a conspiracy. And then Paul Krugman of the New York Times says, I don't know about that. We then see the president tweeting out something, I don't know about that. We then see high-profile individuals like Cenk Uygur and other Young Turks members saying, I don't know about that. And at this point, how do we have this divide with mainstream and independent media personalities saying, nice try, and still the media saying conspiracy theories? The media is so hell-bent on pretending like they're doing the right thing that they're not actually doing the right thing or asking the right questions. And I guess I can just throw it back to this because the main point I wanted to make here, I don't know, look, let me say this. I have these stories pulled up. I have a bunch of other stories. And I was going to do a story either about the absurdity of the Epstein case or about the New York Times and these shooters, because there's actually a bunch of other news here. But I just couldn't figure out what's real and what isn't. And that's when I said to myself, if I have this story from the New York Times that I want to comment on, that's been contradicted by The Verge, can I use it? Well, actually, no, I can't. I can't comment on this article and do research and point out what happened when I know they've published even one section of it that appears to be fake news. Well, The Verge is saying, they're taking their stuff down. This CBS says 8chan was down the whole time. So is this story real or fake? Sorry, can't tell you. And then it brought me to this point where I'm thinking about what happened with Epstein. And it is not unreasonable to think he was murdered. It is not unreasonable to think he did kill himself. We're at a point now where there is no simple solution, and the media is become insane fake news. And I'm going to say this. I can only see complete collapse. Like this is the breakdown of social cohesion. If people on the left, diehard resistance, think Trump did it. If people on the right, diehard Trump supporters, think the Clintons did it. If people in the middle are just saying, look, I don't know, man, but it doesn't seem right. This seems like a conspiracy. And then you see critiques from the establishment saying there's no conspiracy, nothing to see here, move along. I'm kind of like, nah, on this one, you've lost the entirety of the American public. No one knows for sure what happened, but we don't trust you. And then I'm trying to do this, like the story about the shooting in Norway, and the New York Times publishes fake news. I can't tell you what's real, but I do my best. Look, I'm not saying every story ever is fake. I'm just saying in this instance, we've just got a breakdown, and it's hard to know for sure who to trust. And I can only rely on these sources too. So, you know what, man? I don't know. This video seems like all over the place, but I have to say, I pushed this one to the last minute. I'm trying to figure out what's true and what isn't, and what I really just see in the end is everything seems to be falling apart. You know, there's a tweet going around from Stefan Molyneux. I'm not a huge fan of the guy. I don't listen to his content. I'm not trying to be a dick or anything. Don't know much about him. But he said something like, imagine how desperate they had to be to do something so obvious. Well, you know, when I saw that tweet going around, my first thought was like, oh, come on. My second thought was like, well, even Cenk Uygur and Hassan Piker are calling this out. Am I in the wrong to assume that that's a bad point? It was obvious. Everybody knows it's obvious. The joke has been going around since he was arrested that this was going to happen. When Hassan Piker tweeted about Epstein, going to kill himself, I think that was before the first incident where Epstein was found injured. And then apparently, they never ruled that a suicide attempt. They never said it was or wasn't. No one knows for sure. It could have been an assault by his inmate who denies it. It could have been a fake attempt. We don't know. We don't. But the jokes were happening because everybody knows what no one will say. And I think that actually the best way to put it is it's a secret to everyone. Like everybody knows the truth. Everybody knows this doesn't make sense. Everyone expected this to happen. And in many of these circumstances, people pretend They pretend, oh, it must be a conspiracy, or it mustn't be a conspiracy. It's just another day old, it's just another same old, same old. But deep down, everybody knows what happened. In the case of Epstein, it is not a secret. It's just what everyone thinks really happened. Now, of course, I think it's silly that people are pointing the finger across the table at each other. I think it's fair to point out foul play. But I don't know. The main point I'm trying to make is, I guess I did. I guess I'm spinning in circles. It's just, I couldn't get my finger on any one of these stories because it just seems like trust is gone. Pockets are forming which absolutely believe or deny something being true. And then when I go to the New York Times can't even tell me what's real anymore. I'm not saying they always could, but that's what we trusted, right? The paper of record. There's other sources. But now, I'll leave it there. I don't know, whatever. Next segment will be at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you there.